Thank you again for joining the webinar. Please stay till the end of the presentation to answer our polling question. If you answer the poll, you will receive an Uber Eats gift card following the event. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please use the question section on the control panel. I would like to introduce our speakers for today's session, Mike Nelson and Brent Schroeder. Mike, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jamie. I think we were going to cover some of the rules of the road first, if I have that right. There is a polling question.
Yes, I did just mention the poll question. So yeah, as long as everyone answers the poll at the end, they will receive an Uber Eats gift card following the event.
Okay, when will we do that polling question?
It will be at the end of the event.
I see. Okay, thank you. Thanks for clarifying that for me. So hi everybody, I'm Mike Nelson with SUSE. I am located in the Boston, Massachusetts area, and I am responsible for SUSE's SAP business on the eastern part of the US and all of Canada. And I've got some colleagues around the world who have a similar role, basically connecting SUSE to our SAP customers and making sure everything is copacetic in that way. Today, what we want to do for you is do a quick repeat of a presentation that was offered at Sapphire in Orlando at the beginning of June. And there was some good attendance at that session, but there were, I think, 17 competing sessions at that time. So we know we didn't get everybody. The other benefit of this, of course, is that we'll have a replay of this session and the presentation slides will be available afterwards. So SUSE has had quite a tradition in the SAP space of providing the Linux operating system and enterprise class support for the Linux environment under HANA and NetWeaver and the S4 application server and the rest of what SAP requires for an operating system component. We've also added to that over the last few years some things that make it easier to manage the Linux environment that runs SAP. And we've sharpened the edges on everything to do with integrating with HANA and making it more possible to do some interesting things with scale, etc. So we've been right at the heart of this, and the latest invention by SUSE, the latest coordination with SAP, and we'll talk about this today, Brent will lead this discussion, is what we're doing in the area of containers and Kubernetes especially, that powers the SAP Edge Integration Cell, part of the business technology platform. And SAP customers have a lot of things to learn here. I'm sure some of you on the line already know this, but SUSE is essentially bringing more open source technology and open source support to SAP's customer base, and that's what this is all about. So Brent will take you through this, and we'll do some Q&A at the end if you like. If you care to put your questions in the chat box, and we'll address them as we go as well if we can. All right, thanks, and take it away, Brent.
All right, thanks, Mike. My name is Brent Schroeder, and I head the office of the CTO in SUSE. I've been with SUSE for about 7 years now, and prior to that, spent many years in the office as CTO at Dell. So been in kind of the leading edge space with SAP for many years. And today I want to talk about this Edge Integration Cell and what SUSE's role is in that. First off, what is Edge Integration Cell? And what's SUSE's role in collaborating with SAP on that? So to start with, just a quick pictorial representation of Edge Integration Cell. Edge Integration Cell is a new addition to the SAP Integration Suite. For those that aren't familiar with that, it's a business process data integration suite to do business process workflow, to do data integration, data interchange between applications, both within the SAP application suite and with external applications. So there's over 1,000 integrations with other applications to do integration across applications. And one of the key characteristics of SAP Integration Suite is that it is a SaaS solution. which means it runs in the cloud. And when you do the workflow integrations and data movement between applications, that data follows that path. So it would go from an edge through the SAP cloud and back to another business point in your workflow. And for many people, that's an inhibitor or a non-starter, where from a security or privacy concerns, a regional concern, whatever it might be, wanting to be able to ensure that data stays, completely in your control and completely in your premises, then SAP Integration Cell was a challenge for that in its workflows. So what SAP came up with is this SAP Edge Integration Cell. And this doesn't have anything to do necessarily with Edge in the way we think about Edge today and in IoT and manufacturing or different Edge implementations that are kind of outside the data center and on devices close to the point of interaction. Edge in this context essentially means not in the cloud. And so the the Edge Integration Cell enables the movement of the data plane to your premise on demand. So as your application needs to move data and from one application to another, one database to another, and interchange data, that data plane can now be completely on-prem, and the control plane managed from the SaaS interface that you already have. So it makes it for a fairly elegant implementation and still allows you to ensure compliance, regulatory, security controls that you might have for managing data on-prem. So that's what Edge Integration Cell is. Now, when implemented, as Mike noted, the Edge Integration Cell is done as a container application. And so as most people know, SAP does not have a significant footprint in container or many other applications certified and running in containers. So that's where SUSE came into play, is we've been collaborating with SAP on the container implementation, container best practices, providing dev and test landscape, helping with the architectural and testing of it, the usability of it throughout the development process. And now have numerous customers that are in POC and a couple that have gone into production with the application, and continuing to work closely with both with SAP and the customers in how that's evolving and coming along. Kubernetes is not necessarily, well, it's extremely powerful and it has a lot of value propositions that come along with it. Not known for its simplicity and really has a learning curve and an adoption curve that we and others have been helping collaborate with. We've also been working closely with SAP's partners in the Edge Integration Cell project, Fujitsu, HP, and Lenovo, and continue to work with that. So if you look at the supported environments, SUSE's Rancher Prime is supported across numerous versions of Kubernetes, and we're staying on that latest edge. This is the versions that SAP has certified with their application. And you'll notice that we are the only vendor that provides on-premise support in any location. So we've got the capabilities to deliver on-prem, in the cloud, or at the edge, and the only vendor that's currently certified that has that set of capabilities. So why SUSE and Rancher? As Mike noted, most of the industry, most of the SAP users run their SAP estate on SUSE, on our Linux environment, the SLES or SLES for SAP. So 70% of SAP applications and 85% of the SAP HANA is currently running in an SAP environment. So SAP and customers trust us with the mission critical nature and scalability and availability requirements that go along with an SAP business critical environment. And so now we're bringing that to this container environment. SUSE has a product called Rancher, Rancher Prime, and Rancher itself is an open source project and is the most widely used container management product in the world, with millions of downloads and tens of thousands of active users on an ongoing basis. We're an active contributor to the CNCF and organizations that kind of bring all of this open source code together into the solution. And the same level of mission critical availability, lifecycle management that we bring to the Linux environment, we have that same mentality and approach to our Rancher environment. And so really targeting that enterprise level requirements. So I mentioned that Kubernetes has a bit of a reputation for being a challenge. The choice of the challenges of selecting what technology to use, deploying it, managing it on an ongoing basis. Many people will find, well, maybe download Kubernetes and some containers for a POC, and that POC will go perfectly fine. It might have 3 or 4 developers and a handful of users, and then the initial reaction is, well, this isn't so bad, I can do it myself. And then people start to try to scale it. And it's in that scaling where we find many people start to run into challenges. How do you handle not just a single cluster or a handful of clusters, but hundreds or thousands of clusters? How do you handle the lifecycle management of a full container ecosystem, which isn't just a Kubernetes project, it's dozens of projects put together into an operational platform, and the life cycling of those together throughout your runtime environment is a critical challenge. So what we find is that the majority of customers really lack experience and expertise in Kubernetes to deploy and run an enterprise class container ecosystem. And then finally, the ongoing challenge of security in any environment, not just Kubernetes, but the majority of Kubernetes users have found that they have had some related security breach. And this is not because Kubernetes is innately insecure. This has to do with experience and complexity. Is it set up correctly? Is it life cycled correctly? And then there are numerous aspects in Kubernetes and in containers that disrupt traditional security methodologies. So if you just take your current tools, current experience in securing a virtual machine environment or a virtual machine in the cloud, then you will leave numerous vulnerabilities open in your Kubernetes environment. So it really requires a security strategy that is cloud native from the ground up and understands the nuances and challenges that come with securing the Kubernetes environment. So let me talk a moment about SUSE Rancher Enterprise. And SUSE Rancher Enterprise is our full suite of the container ecosystem, all the way from the Linux operating system through the deployment and life cycling of it, and then the day-to-day operations, and finally securing the environment. And I'll go through each one of these in a little bit more detail. When I kind of take that first architectural picture that I had on page 1, kind of blow up, what does an edge node look like in this context? You obviously have your application that you have on there, and then SAP's lifecycle management solution that manages what's on the node from an SAP standpoint and manages the workflows in the context of that particular instance, regardless of its location. And then added to that, That is all hosted on a Linux operating system. And then there's the Rancher aspects of in the node, the RKE, the Kubernetes platform, and Longhorn, our distributed storage platform for cloud native environments. And then 3 other third-party projects, MetalLB, Postgres, SQL, and Redis. So that's what a node looks like. And then Rancher Prime, the management is a central management console that allows you to manage all of the nodes that could be deployed on it and manage these nodes wherever they may be. So you may have some nodes that are in the cloud, a set of nodes that are on-prem for security or performance or latency issues or concerns. You might have some nodes that are remote and truly on the edge, as in the representation here. So you might have a factory or a plant that's managing the real-time logistics of inventory and feeding that information back into your order management system, an inventory management system. So you may have nodes that are distributed throughout your enterprise, and Rancher Manager can manage all of those from a single console, regardless of where they are. So now, just a little bit on the value propositions of each one and the characteristics of each element in here. And we've chosen, this is really an opinionated view of kind of a best practice stack. So we've chosen where there's multiple options, what is the best fit for the workload, for the use case, for security concerns, lifecycle management that might go with this environment. So at the foundation of this is our enterprise Linux in a micro footprint. It's a Linux Enterprise Micro. And it's an immutable implementation and a footprint optimized implementation of our standard Linux. So this isn't a different Linux, a different source tree that we manage. All of SUSE's products, Linux environment, come from a single source tree. And then we do the build kind of based on the use case that it's targeted. So /micro is really targeted at that small footprint, immutable use case that is best matches very well with the containerized environment. Its hardened core is really focused on implementing security best practices out of the box. We provide long-term stability with the releases. So if you need to deploy something in a factory setting that you might want a 3 to 5 year life cycle, that's absolutely not a problem. And it's fully remotely manageable. And manageable in this context, in context with the container environment. And so that's one of the things we've done as far as how we've built our stack, as we can do a full stack management. The next element in the solution is RKE2. This is a certified Kubernetes distribution from SUSE. Some of you may be familiar with RKE1 or even K3S, which is typically our edge, small footprint optimized solution. But RKE2 is our latest version of Kubernetes distribution of RKE. And it was developed in conjunction with our federal business unit, who had obviously, working with the federal government, had many security concerns that they wanted addressed up front. So we've built a lot of security aspects straight into the distribution so that you wouldn't have to be worried about them or try to figure out what's the best practices configuration for ensuring the highest security. And do I have a good, well-trusted supply chain of where this is coming from? So this one's FIPS certified, high availability, automatically configurable out of the box, which simplifies deployment, and then very flexible in its scaling and access controls that come along with that. The next aspect of the stack is in the storage. So we've got a distributed storage solution, Longhorn, And it is a persistent storage specifically designed for cloud native out of the box. So its management experience integrates directly into Rancher, so you can manage it from in that context and don't have to have numerous management consoles managing this separately than you do the rest of your ecosystem. So it really simplifies the experience from a user standpoint in adopting this, particularly if it's new technology to you. It's replicated across multiple nodes, bringing that resiliency and redundancy, and then very efficient resource utilization in the way it shares blocks of data across volumes. Then at the top of the management ecosystem is Rancher Prime. So Rancher Prime is our secure Kubernetes management to manage containers anywhere they might be. So it does a hybrid cluster, multi-cloud management. So you can have containers actually in the cloud, you can have containers on-prem, you can have them distributed at the edge, and they don't necessarily even need to be SUSE containers. So if you want some containers in, or you've got an application running on containers, say in Amazon on EKS or in Azure on AKS, Google, we can manage those containers all from the same context. So in our open choice methodology, we provide that degree of flexibility in being able to manage your applications regardless of where they're located or what platform that they're running on. And then a trusted supply chain via secure registry. One of the obviously the biggest concerns in the industry today is supply chain integrity and knowing where everything came from. And so we can provide that degree of trust in what we produce, what's the chain of custody of that code that you're getting, and in the lifecycle management when updates come out, having some confidence that those have been tested and validated, and ability to deploy those in a consistent manner. And then finer grained control, access and governance controls, being able to set policies, your own security policies on what pods look like, who's got access to them, and all of those controls being in Rancher Prime. And then the final ingredient in the stack is SUSE New Vector Prime. And New Vector is a solution that was designed from the ground up for Kubernetes and containers. I mentioned at the beginning that there's several aspects of containers that really disrupt traditional security models. One, for example, is container-to-container communication doesn't happen on the network in a way that's visible through traditional firewall and network monitoring tools. And so container-to-container communication will be invisible to you. New Vector implements a layer 7 firewall that actually can monitor and do deep packet inspection at real time, at scale, between containers. So if you want to see if there's, for example, a SQL injection attack or vulnerability in your environment, we can see that as it's going on and set alerts and take action to help remediate that. We also have several modern runtime protections, such as admission controls, knowing for sure that the code that's being released is passing the vulnerability scans and compliance of your policies at the point of launching that. And then finally, what I view as one of the most critical aspects of a modern security ecosystem is a zero trust methodology. And our zero trust methodology is a little bit different than many. We base ours on a behavioral learning methodology of monitoring the application under normal load and seeing what that standardized behavior is. And once that behavior has been learned, then the application can be put in lockdown mode. So it will require you to guess at what's normal or go configure a lot of different ports and devices and applications and identities, individually by hand. This is all in an automated process and in a container environment, which is very dynamic, scaling up and down, adding new applications, adding new capabilities on an ongoing basis. You want an environment, a security environment that can learn as you go and then lock down the environment. So that's a summary view of the SUSE enterprise container management solution, all the way from the operating system to the security ecosystem that we wrap around that, and why we believe SUSE should be your trusted platform for running anything SAP, and especially as you get started with that. So if I summarize, those SUSE value propositions, first and foremost is continuity and consistency. No matter where you're deploying it, we give the continuity of a single solution across those environments, on-prem, in the cloud, and at the edge from a single management context. That greatly improves your learning curve, improves usability, and then the consistency of the implementation and the surety of the implementation, regardless of where it's being deployed. Second is the agility and efficiency. Being able to deliver applications faster and really optimize to the environment that you're deploying to, optimized whether it's to the edge or to the cloud, knowing that you've got the best implementation and the best practices implementation for those. And then finally, security and velocity. And I put these two together for a reason, is that security is absolutely paramount in any deployment today. And if security is not kind of baked in and a thought in process from the very beginning, then it absolutely impacts your velocity and ability to move rapidly, both on initial deployments and on lifecycle management. So SUSE's strategy is really about integrated security, working in conjunction with the broader security strategy that you have as an organization to ensure that you can rapidly deliver updates, rapidly deliver security fixes, and then keep operating even in a compromised environment, the zero trust solution. And then we wrap all those in our insights and best practices. If I go back to the very beginning, one of the major challenges people have is the knowledge and experience in Kubernetes. And SUSE brings that knowledge and experience to work in partnership with you and in conjunction with you and your partners, in partnership with SAP, to understand what are the best practices and help you deploy those and operate in that manner and develop policies that you can automate into the ecosystem to enforce those best practices and maintain those best practices throughout the life cycle of your deployment. So with that, I'm going to move on to kind of opening it up to questions. Hopefully this has been kind of a good initial summary to get you to understand or make available what it is. And if you're using, the traditional SAP integration solution of, PIPO, then and have been holding off and of moving and upgrading to the latest SAP integration suite, this now brings you those on-prem controls, the on-prem data plane that wasn't available in the prior instantiation, and can give you the confidence and comfort in being able to deploy and run on-prem.
Hey, Brent, I just want to chime in here for a second in my capacity as a salesperson here at SUSE, and just offer anyone who's interested a chance to meet after this. We'll schedule a meeting to go into a little bit more detail. That meeting could include your SAP team, your SAP salesperson and technical team, any other partner you'd like, and we'd just be happy to dig in with you about your use case, timing, scope, any of that. So happy to do that. Please reach out to me following the call, and we can do that. So thank you very much. And thank you, Brent.
So let's go to, yeah, absolutely. So let's go to questions. And so there's a question tab on the application. So if you want to insert any questions there, there's one in there right now. And the question is, do you implement and support device agnostic hardware or just provide recommendations to customers? So let me try to interpret the question. We don't provide a stack that is all the way to the hardware, but we do work very closely with all of the major vendors. So whether it's, say, Lenovo, HP, and Fujitsu in this particular project, obviously Dell is also a very close partner of ours and SAP's, and together we could bring a recommendation for a hardware platform. SUSE solutions are designed really to be agnostic from the hardware, and we support an extremely broad range of hardware. So from not just traditional x86 with Intel and AMD, but all working closely with them, but also ARM platforms, the mainframe platforms, power platforms. We support a container infrastructure across the entire spectrum. So it really just depends upon what your environment is, and then we can help, with a design recommendations kind of based on experience and the scaling that you might have. Next question would be, what are the Kubernetes platforms you support? So I'll answer this in 2 steps. Out of the box, and our best practices recommendation obviously is the SUSE stack, and we've got 2 major distributions that we provide: the RKE2 that I referenced, and also a K3S, which is a footprint optimized version, really targeted at edge and small footprint devices. But Rancher as a management platform supports any CNCF certified distribution. So that includes Amazon EKS, AKS on Azure, GKE, on Google. We support OpenShift. So if you've got some running on OpenShift or a mix of different environments, we can support OpenShift as well. And one thing that's a little different about our solution for multi-vendor, multi-cloud support is we do full lifecycle management support, which is a little bit different than some others provide. So you want to check if you're looking at different vendors for multi-cloud support. Some provide operational day 2 management of heterogeneous clusters, but that requires you to set up and deploy the cluster using native tools. So you still have to have the licenses and all of the skill set in a multi-environment, and you can't kind of build kind of that single end-to-end solution. So for us in Rancher, as long as it's CNCF certified, we support it.
Brent, I think the other thing that's probably worth mentioning is that we've got a nice long history now of supporting these situations, these scenarios outside of SAP. SAP is new to this, but SUSE and Rancher certainly are not. So we've got a rich history, and I think what we'll find is that we'll be connecting SAP to other bits of the enterprise that are already using these technologies. We'll have a pivotal role in that.
Yep. Good follow-up question here. Customers are kind of looking for an on-prem, the hyperscalers not being able to necessarily operate during an internet outage, and that is correct. They have some partial solutions that could help bridge that, But that is one of the key aspects of being able to support a I'm going to still say multi-cloud, because I view cloud native doesn't necessarily imply public cloud. It can absolutely be on-prem. And we've got numerous customers that have chosen Rancher for two aspects that, let's call it internet outage. One could be an incidental or unintentional outage. Home Depot is one of our customers, and one of the driving factors that they chose, and this isn't specifically for Edge Integration Cell, this is just for Rancher. One of the driving factors that chose them that led them to choosing Rancher was they had to be operational in a store during disaster situations. Because when is the most critical time that you want to be able to go to Home Depot and get home supplies? After a hurricane, after a fire, after a tornado, whatever it is. So they absolutely wanted stores to have 100% uptime in the middle of a natural disaster. And so you can have it absolutely set up that if the internet goes down, the end nodes can continue to operate in a offline model, fully operational. When they come back on, do any of the synchronization that's necessary, any updating of applications, anything that was in flight will be resynchronized and rejoin clusters. The other is that we support an air-gapped model. So this was very critical in a federal environment, obviously, because you've got numerous kind of tactical situations, battlefield situations, where people are absolutely air-gapped, devices are air-gapped. We also have many of those situations in oil and gas, very remote implementations where devices have never seen the internet. Out in an oil field in far west Texas, they bring it in, they onboard it in an air-gapped manner, and they life cycle it in an air-gapped manner. So we support that as well. So another question, would RKE2 run on VMware? Let me qualify that. I'm going to make that a qualified yes, in that RKE2 runs on Linux, which runs on VMware. So we've got a very large number of our Rancher deployments use VMware as the physical layer operational infrastructure operations, and then put on top of that SUSE Linux as the operating system and the guests, and then RKE2. So yes, that's a very common model. One that we're working on, which would logically work in this, so I'm going to deviate into this VMware question and run it another click down, because I know many customers are, wanting some alternatives to VMware. And you may have some environments where, I want to continue with VMware because it makes sense, but if I can lessen my footprint, then that would make sense as well and help me from a cost management standpoint and multi-sourcing. We now have a solution, and it wasn't outlined in this particular product overview, but it's called Harvester. And what Harvester is viewed as a cloud-native hyper-converged approach to virtualization. So we've kind of inverted the stack, and we support, we run Linux at the base on the infrastructure, and then on that run containers and support virtual machines in the context of that and manage them from Rancher. And so we don't necessarily promote it as a full stack VMware replacement of all of their virtual cloud solution. But for those that need kind of the basic virtual machine management and vSphere class equivalent, Harvester provides that, and one of the value propositions of that, and it could come into play here where you may have applications that are running in virtual machines and some applications that you want to run in containers, then Harvester would be able to provide a context for running both those virtual machines in the container environment and managing all of that from a Rancher UI. Now today, SAP HANA is not supported in a Harvester configuration. SAP is still kind of at the scale that HANA is at from resource demands and just the physical demands on the system. Only supports two hypervisors, and that is VMware and KVM, just the native hypervisors under native virtualization. So that's some nuances that are going on and evolving in the VMware environment. So, and may come into play in this context if Kubernetes if this is your first foray into Kubernetes. Any other questions?
I think we're probably ready for our poll question, Brent.
Absolutely. Let's we can do the poll, and then if there's further questions, I can be online. And like I've got on the screen here a QR code and a place. Let's if you've got questions that come up in an hour from now or next week, absolutely reach out to the team, and we can get you connected with subject matter experts that can really dive into the depths and even take you through some hands-on reviews of it. So why don't we do the poll, and then I'll come back to see if there's any new questions.
I think that poll's pretty self-explanatory, but if anybody has any questions, just raise your hand.
Okay, good. Thanks for the feedback, everybody's. A question, you're clearly, obviously, looking at it as the future, and then a couple of meeting it today. Are there people? Are any of you running it? Put it in the comments. Running it in production, SAP Integration Suite in production today, and/or evaluating Edge Integration Cell? We didn't really set this up we should have set this up as a roundtable and we could just sit and chat about things, but we can use the chat and the question for anything else. So.
We'll do that next time, Brent.
Yeah, I love that forum. It was good to drill down. So, okay. I don't personally have experience in SAP digital manufacturing, but we can get back with the team, and if you wanted to do some further follow-up, absolutely something that we could collaborate with SAP on, with our experience with the Kubernetes side. We've got a team on-prem in Waldorf that has been working with the SAP Edge Integration Cell development team on this. So, collectively, we've got some good experience and many POCs that are running, and a couple, like I said earlier, a couple in production. But even in the SAP community, the experience in this space is still probably pretty limited. So if you reach out, we can get the subject matter, that limited subject matter expertise, together, and we can collaborate on supporting you.
That's good, Brent. Thank you for fielding the questions. Thanks for the presentation.
Absolutely. I want to thank everybody, also thank everybody for joining as well, and look forward to collaborating with you in your journey.
Take care, everybody. Thank you.